fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
An all-new season of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Mom Talk has just been blowing up.
Whitney and Jen are on Dancing with the Stars.
Taylor is a bachelorette.
Saying that out loud is crazy. Like, that is huge.
But all the cool opportunities could pull us apart.
It's causing issues in everyone's marriage.
My whole world is falling apart right now. It's chaos.
Watch the Hulu original series, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Beneful. Mornings are when the grind starts. Stretches, immaculate. Cardio, crushed it. Territory, marked. Sorry, geraniums. The dog routine is on point, but it can get a little wolf. That's why I fuel up with high-protein Beneful freshly prepared meals. I'm eating clean with real meat and veggies, served fresh from the pantry. Kick boring in the bowl with Beneful freshly prepared meals. Visit Purina.com/Beneful to shop now.
This episode is brought to you by Stouffer's. Here comes three-time juggling champion Natalia Rogers. She's juggling law school, her TA job. Oh, narrowly catches the laundry. What's that fourth ball? Parents unexpectedly showed up at dinner time? Is that too much for Natalia? Not with Stouffer's Chicken Alfredo and its mouth-watering mix of Asiago, Romano, and Parmesan. When you're juggling four things at once and the clock strikes dinner, think Stouffer's.
Adobe Acrobat, your new foundation. Use PDF spaces to generate a presentation. Grab your docs, your permits, your moves. AI levels up your pitch, gets it in a groove. Choose a template with your timeless cool. Come on now, let's flex those tools. Draft, design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that, do that, do that with Acrobat.
Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
All right, Duke fans, ready for episode 810 of the DBR podcast, Duke Basketball Roundup. We got a special one for you here. If you haven't filled out your brackets yet, heck, if you have already filled out your brackets, you need to listen to this episode to know that you made the right picks or the wrong picks and adjust things and all that other kind of stuff. Because I am Jason. I'm with my buddy Donald. Donald, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I just came back from the Pistons game. The Pistons were in town facing the Wizards. I got to go with my cousin who was in town. But Jason, more importantly, Pistons got the win. I'm happy about that. I'm even happier about the fact that Kenny Blakeney and Howard have won their very first ever NCAA tournament game. Congratulations to the Bison.
Yes, their reward for that is to play Michigan.
Yeah, sorry about that, Kenny. I tried to fix that for you, but the NCAA tournament wouldn't let me.
Yeah, it was a heck of a game. They led pretty much the whole way through. I'm thrilled for friend of the podcast, Kenny Blakeney. We've had him on before, and as I was saying earlier, the reason you need to listen to this podcast is because we have a special guest with us right now who is the definitive authority on bracket busters, giant killers, all those other kind of terms that you want to call it. We are joined, as we have been throughout this season, by Jordan Brenner. Jordan, tell folks why they should listen to you when it comes to the brackets.
Because Jason's telling you to listen to me. And we do whatever Jason says on this podcast. No, look, to the degree that I have any value in life whatsoever, this is my 20th year, which is really freaking weird, of doing metrics-based underdog picks. It started at ESPN with a little project we called Giant Killers. It grew into a big thing that, not just in the magazine, not just online, but we actually had a 2-hour special on the TV network with dear friend Shane Battier, among others, on the on the set, and now we're over at The Athletic, where it's called Bracket Breakers. And Peter Keating, my writing and podcast partner, and I have been doing it at The Athletic for several years now. And yeah, we have our model, which is affectionately known as Slingshot, ready to project upsets in the bracket. And it's, had a really nice track record, and I'm happy to share its findings with you guys on this podcast.
Awesome, man. But before we get to that was called a deep tease, because before we get to that, we're going to talk to Jordan, like I said, as we have been virtually every month of this season. He comes on and tells us what he sees from the Duke Blue Devils. Jordan is someone who watches Duke with a close eye. I will start by asking you, were you at all surprised that they won the ACC tournament, as injured as they were, as unimportant perhaps as that ACC tournament was to Duke's seeding and the such? How impressed were you with, or how not impressed were you with their performance?
I was surprised, like probably everyone else who listens to your show. Those injuries hit hard, and it was hard to imagine this team looking the same. So, and I will say they did not look the same, but credit to them for finding a way to win anyway. It speaks a lot to the talent. First of all, let's no joke. Those 7 guys are still really talented.
Yeah,
but they are just 7 guys. So it speaks to the talent of the 7 guys. It speaks to the character and toughness and will to win of this squad, and it sure as hell speaks a lot to the coaching staff.
As we enter the tournament, obviously the first question that we have is the status of Pat Gongba, whether he will be back for round 1. Regardless of when he actually gets back on the court, what's your take on Duke and what they need to do to advance deep into the tournament and, of course, hopefully get back to that Final Four?
Yeah, I think if Gongba isn't back and back in a meaningful way, like not playing 10 minutes of tentative basketball as foul relief for Malik Brown and Cameron Boozer, if he has to be something pretty close to what we've seen from him early in the tournament, and to get to a Final Four, they need full-on Pat Gongba, because you even heard John Shire say this, and I've said it with you guys before. He's arguably the second best player on this team, and he changes so much for them at both ends. He's a very unusual type of player in the diversity of his skill set, and he enables so many other things for this team, and particularly in the absence of their starting point guard, who I'm sure we will talk about as well. His playmaking and ability to facilitate from up top is that much more important. And just that extra 8th man versus 7 is huge. So yes, I don't think you would talk to a Duke fan, observer, and probably even member of the community on the planet who's like, you know what, this team still a good chance to win a national championship without Pat Gongba. No way.
Well, I mean, speaking of Pat, right? And again, the biggest question that we have in the short term is whether he'll play. But in the absence of Pat Gongba for the first round, second round, what have you, if he does not play at any point in this NCAA tournament, what do you think is the biggest thing that Duke has to overcome from his absence?
I think it's, off the top of my head, 2 or 3 things. First of all, it just really decreases the margin for error, right? You really introduce a whole other layer of things going wrong that could be cataclysmic. One more injury, foul trouble, an off night from one player. There's not a lot of other places to turn, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, we know that they're essentially playing with 2 bigs at this point, although we can talk about Nick Hemenia and how comfortable he looks as a 4 and all sort of the big like things he does well, particularly rebounding. But clearly, Gongba's rim protection, Gongba's offensive rebounding is crucial to this team. And then the other thing is, this is not, we've talked all year, right, that 3-point shooting could be an Achilles heel for this team. They shot 32.5% from 3 in the ACC tournament. Now, part of that is you took a 40% 3-point shooter and Caleb Foster off the floor, but also Gungba helps them get better looks through passing and screening and commanding attention. Okay. Malik Brown does not command the same attention on offense as Gungba. And I think Duke had a harder time getting some of its primary players open because of the lack of Gungba. The last thing I would say is that I adore Malik Brown. I think if Duke had a healthy Malik Brown last year, you're not worried about a comeback from Houston. I felt that strongly about it. But to a certain extent, Malik thrives when he's playing 20 minutes a game. The way he plays, he's so aggressive. He's reaching. It's not the way you want out of he's going to foul a lot. It's just his nature of the way he plays. And he was a little bit overexposed. And you saw Shire sat him for the last 10 minutes of the championship game. So I think he's that much more effective when he doesn't have to play, when you're not asking him to play 30 minutes a night, right?
Hey, it's kind of his role, right? Like his role is to be the guy that comes off the bench, for lack of a better term, Speedy Gonzalez all over the place, right? He has his hand in everything. And then, okay, great. Like now that you have messed up the system, now our team can expose the rest of it. And I think he's great in that. And I think that's part of this new balance of 7 guys of trying to relearn roles and responsibilities and how you still get the best of them while also making up for the absence of 2 key players.
I was going to say, Jordan, let me take you to the other missing guy, Caleb Foster. And my question about Caleb is really what you think of Caden Boozer, who has absorbed essentially all of Caleb's minutes. I mean, Caden literally played 40 minutes last game as opposed to splitting time at point guard. He is now the only point guard for the most part, even though, as we all saw, frankly, he would cross half court and then give the ball to his brother a lot of the time. What do you think of what we got from Caden in the ACC tournament? And, is some of the success he had against, both Clemson and Virginia, do you see that sustainable? I mean, put another way, is Caden Boozer a guy who might average 14 plus points per game in the NCAA tournament?
The pragmatist in me should probably say something like, we were probably all too panicked and worried after the Florida State game about what would happen with Caden Boozer, and the hype probably has gone too far in the other direction off his best performance, right? So, like, if you get a Caden Boozer that's somewhere in the middle, that's probably good enough. I still think the 3-point shooting, someone else is going to try a similar tactic as what Florida State did and at least slough off him. Credit to Shire immediately for adjusting. What everyone thinks, oh, you have a non-shooter, there's nothing else they can do. No, you use them as a screener because then there's no help on the guy coming off the ball. It was great. It was perfect. It made so much sense. I was so happy to see John do that. It's a great adjustment. Again, it comes back to...
I was going to say, the other thing I think he did was he had Caden just go ahead and take that space himself and get himself downhill as he went toward the basket.
Right. Look, you remember the comments they've made about not being able to play 4 on 5 on offense anymore after Mark Mitchell and things like that. And it felt a little similar to that for a bit. But Caden Boozer all season has been a good finisher around the rim. He really does know how to use his size there. His midi game is good, and I think will continue to get better. Floaters, etc. Nice touch around the hoop. So I do think he can get in the paint and score. The size certainly helps. The playmaking, ball handling is a certain lack of dynamic ability that Caleb Foster shows in spurts. He's certainly not the defender Caleb Foster is. And again, what I said earlier about hopefully a return of Patrick Gungba relieves some of the playmaking pressure from him. I don't think you want him in this 40-minute-a-game role. I think he was just playing so well that John just didn't want to take him out. But I also think there could be occasions where you do put another shooter on the floor and take him out, which leads to Darren Harris, right? Like, if that guy can hit a couple open threes a game, and we talked about this months ago about whether he would jump into the rotation, and we kind of disagreed there, but now it's by necessity, and we've seen this at Duke, whether it was Casey Sanders stepping up in the absence of Carlos Boozer or Grayson Allen obviously emerging. He doesn't even have to do that. Just play good defense, play 10 minutes a game, hit a couple open threes. That will help this team dramatically.
I got an incredible Caden Boozer stat for you.
Give it to me.
So what do you think Caden Boozer shoots on 2-point field goals, which he's taking almost exclusively in the lane, contested, not easy shots. Even though he's close, he's shooting them. They are always contested. What do you think in ACC play Caden Boozer shot on his 2-point field goals?
I would, without looking at Ken Palm to cheat, I would guess well over 50%.
Yeah, and wouldn't like 50% from a guard, that would be really good, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How about 64.4%?
Oh my goodness. That's a
big man number.
That's That's the 15th best in the ACC. He was the 15th best 2-point field goal guy in the ACC from a guard.
Yep.
That's a crazy good number. You said he finishes well. He finishes like outstanding around the rim.
What they have to do a little bit is invert their offense. I hate, this is what I was a little frustrating me with seeing Cam Boozer continue to attack the rim against Virginia and get his shot handed back to him, whether he was having trouble with dealing with the length in the middle, or he was exhausted, or some combination thereof. God, I thought they could have killed them on pick and pop all day, and I actually wanted him to shoot more threes than he did, because, by the way, he's a 40% three-point shooter. That's your other shooter. So I know it takes you out of a lot of what you want to do in getting downhill and getting to the line, but gosh, talk about, a resource. Utilize him from behind the arc.
So as we enter the NCAA tournament, of course, we know our path and what it could be. Take all the teams out except for Duke.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter who we play. My question is this: Is there a type of team that you think could give Duke fits in the NCAA tournament, and what aspect of the basketball game would be the thing that gives them the most fits?
Yeah, obviously Arizona or Michigan or whatever, right? So you're talking more stylistically.
Correct.
I think a team that really pressures the ball and puts heavy emphasis on point guard play, multiple ball handlers, etc., could frustrate them, especially if they're short Gongba, just in terms of depth and whatnot. So that's interesting. Rick Pitino loves to get after you defensively, so that sort of sits out there a little bit. I think you saw length. Shot blocking at the 5 can be an issue for Cam Boozer. That would be something that really scare me. And then I think a coach who's willing to
Zuby Ejiofor on St. John's is
but Zuby Ejiofor, he's 6'9". He's not
he's not 7'1".
But he's a really good shot blocker. For 6'9", he's a really good shot blocker.
Yes, but it's not the same level of length. I think
Boozer
that's true. Can get into his body a little bit more, but I certainly hear what you're saying. And then, obviously you worry about any team with great 3-point shooting that can get hot on any given night, right? That's just any team's worry. But the way this team is particularly constructed right now, you worry about, quick guards, because you could stick Dame Sarr on a point guard right now, and that's taken care of. But having Caleb Foster as that second, also excellent on-ball perimeter defender, it's a big loss. And it's just so you guys know I've had a soft spot in my heart for Caleb Foster for 3 years. I think there was nobody as excited as I was when in the Carolina game last year, when he emerged from the dead and changed that game. And just to see what he's put into this, to have him miss us, I know he's doing everything he can to try to get back if they make it to a Final Four. It's still, I think we have to be very cautious in expecting that to actually happen. But, it sounds like he's attacking. I selfishly, I hope we get this guy for a senior year, because he deserves that proper send off because he's better than his numbers, and he's just so important to this team. And it's sad that Duke fans who've, the very online Duke fans, I will call them, who like to talk before they think. It's really sad that it took this for them to see how much he matters to Duke.
Yeah, Jordan, I've said many times this year, the fact that Caleb Foster could be your second best perimeter defender was a ridiculous luxury that this Duke team had this season. All right, dude, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, We're going to get to your brackets. We're going to get to your picks. We're going to figure out and find out which of those big upsets Jordan Brenner is telling us all we should take. We're going to have that for you in just a moment.
DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook for live betting, is built for March. The tournament is unexpected. Rewards are guaranteed. DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering the most generous rewards on the market.
Yeah, with DraftKings, the number one sportsbook for live betting, you're not betting on what might happen. You're betting on what's happening right now. Are you new to DraftKings? Bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code DukeBB. That's code DukeBB to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets instantly. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
This Easter, skip the ordinary and whip up something golden with melty, creamy Velveeta cheese. From scalloped potatoes to rich mac and cheese, Velveeta turns every bite into a crowd-pleasing celebration, bringing the extra to the ordinary, transforming simple sides into lip-smacking, satisfying moments. So go on, make it melt, make it craveable, make it indulgent. Velveeta, respect the drip. Visit Velveeta.com/Easter for some recipe inspiration.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
This episode is brought to you by Cologuard. Do you know what's really scary? Not screening for colon cancer when you turn 45. The Cologuard test is non-invasive, requires no special prep or time off work, and ships right to your door. In just 3 simple steps, Cologuard takes the scare out of colon cancer screening. If you're 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about the Cologuard test. Cologuard is available by prescription only. Learn more or request a prescription today at Cologuard.com/screen.
Back from the break here on the Duke Basketball Roundup, Jason and Donald with Jordan Brenner, who has written the book for The Athletic on what picks you should make. Jordan, give me your definition of the kind of upset that you're looking for.
All right. So when we started this thing back in 2006 and I stumbled upon George Mason with like very basic math, now we have a team of mathematicians from Furman University building our model. It's grown quite a bit. But the definition of what a bracket breaker's upset is hasn't changed. It's got to be a 5-seed difference. So your 7-10 game doesn't count, but your 11-6 game, your 2-7 game, whatever, those count. So that's the basic definition. And then the lesson we've learned from this years ago is this, and it translates to not just basketball, other sports. Underdogs, and this was the basis for our podcast as well, which is a multi-sport project. Underdogs need to utilize high risk, high reward strategies. If you're playing LeBron James in a game of one-on-one, do you want to play him to 1 or 11?
You want to play him to 1.
Correct. So
especially if you get the ball first.
So number 1, underdogs in basketball want to generally slow the pace. Doesn't mean there haven't been fast-paced underdogs that win, but by and large, our model sees more correlation between slower-paced dogs who control the tempo. Because It's fewer individual skirmishes you have to win. If each possession is its own game, it's a fewer contests. Then how do you amplify that? Well, you build possessions. And by the way, when we talked about using that term, it was a novel concept. Now you hear coaches talking, including Duke's very own coach, who I'm very proud of for having adopted this mentality, talks about playing the possession game, getting extra possessions all the time. How do you do that? Offensive rebounds, forcing turnovers. And then the converse, controlling your defensive glass, avoiding turnovers. But we find for the underdogs, bigger emphasis on the forcing and the rebounding. Go. Yeah.
Jordan, it sounds to me like you're talking about field goal attempts being a really important statistic here.
Well, yes, it doesn't. Yes.
By the way, you don't get the joke. The joke is
yes.
I'm obsessed with field goal attempts.
Oh, are you? All right.
Yeah.
You want more bites at the apple, right?
Yeah.
And then what kind of field goal attempts, you ask? Well, the most valuable kind, obviously, because I don't know if you know this, but 3 is worth more than 2. So teams that take a lot of 3s tend to also have a better chance at authoring these upsets. On the flip side, we also have safety ratings for giants. So there's 2 sides of a coin, right? So there are some teams that play styles that lend themselves to being upset. And wouldn't you know, Purdue and Virginia of the past decade are 2 of the teams with 2 of the most negative styles in our model, and they kept losing to underdogs. So then our crack math team from Furman puts this all together. They do something called cluster analysis. They find a similar games model, and the next thing you know, it spits out a percentage chance of a team winning. Pretty cool.
So I have a question. All of that, we've done this over a couple of years, so it's starting to click in my brain. The little do with the symbols doing this, I can feel that. Now, my question to you, as I'm looking at these brackets, and I go, oh, this team can shoot the 3s, they can, they can limit possessions, they can get offensive rebounds, things like that. What in your mind, stylistically, it normally breaks the bracket buster? What is the thing that will say, oh, they can shoot all the 3s they want? They're playing this team that does this. It doesn't matter.
Well, it's exactly what we talked about with the Giants that have possession building tactics that protect themselves against the off shooting night are tend to be more bulletproof. So Tennessee, for instance, is a 6 seed, right? And might look fairly vulnerable in a 6-11 matchup. Lead the country in offensive rebounding percentage at 45%. So you want a team that's built to withstand a poor shooting night, because almost every team is going to have a poor shooting night at some point in March. And that's, by the way, why this Duke team has an incredibly high safety rating, as we call it, right? Against at least their first 2 games would be guaranteed to be bracket breaker games against a 16 and then an 8 or a 9, because they do all those things. And their offensive rebounding rate is great. They don't turn the ball over. They force a decent number of turnovers. They defensive rebound great. So those are the things that add safety and conversely make Giants vulnerable. Like in Alabama, that Alabama adds variance by shooting a lot of 3s, does not get offensive rebounds, does not force turnovers. Just picture one game where those 3s aren't going in, and where do they turn?
They do have players who may not be playing.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have quantities of weed as a factor in the model yet.
You got to add it in next year.
But
now.
I mean, I feel like 2.1 pounds might be a little more significant than
Oh my God! All right,
if it was 2.3, they'd be in trouble.
Yeah,
Jordan, I got to let's put the marijuana convictions aside in the side.
Do we have to? Because I mean, we could go along. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's put the Alabama marijuana story aside for a moment.
Yep.
To me, the thing you said, I was all ready to ask you, give me your big upset picks, but instead, what you've been talking about is fascinating to me. The notion that some teams are safer than others. Give me your safest teams. I don't know. Is it a half dozen or so of those teams that you go, the way they play, they're not going to let you play super slow. They're going to get offensive rebounds. There's not a huge variance in the way they perform. Give me your safest teams, and please let Duke be one of them.
Well, I'm going to give you can I give you a meandering answer a little bit here, because it's not as simple as saying this team's safe. Well, obviously a 1 seed is safer than a 6 seed because they're better.
Sure.
And and by the way, a huge component of our model is simply an SRS system, right? A basic power ranking of how good. The other thing, and you'll see this on KenPom and you'll see it in our model, the best teams are better than ever.
Yes.
The KenPom ratings are huge compared to the past. And I think a lot of it is related to the portal and to NIL and roster building. But I also think coaches are getting smarter about playing analytically sound games, and they are creating more optimized versions of their teams. Whereas I think 10, 15 years ago, there were coaches stuck in older ways of playing, and an analytically savvy guy like Shaka Smart gave his team an advantage by playing against teams like that. So keep that in your back pocket. I'm actually going to be writing something next week that looks at the numbers and the difference between basically the gap has grown post NIL between the power conferences and the rest of the country. It's why we saw, since we've been doing this, the second lowest number of upsets last year, 4 total bracket breaker upsets. The only year with fewer was 2007 with 3. There's been stuff written already today, including at The Athletic, about that posited a lot of the reasons I have in my story. We've got a little more math in our story that's going to come out next week, but we want to see what happens this year. But safety relative to seed, let's talk about that, right? So, for example, Tennessee, much safer than the other 6 seeds, although Louisville, surprisingly, computers love them, even though we might have some different views on them watching them through the ACC season. The 1 seeds all look very, very invulnerable. Houston, same thing, right? These teams play, they're not just good, they play possession building styles, right? So if I had to guess, I would if this is going to be a chalky tournament again or a wild one, until I see otherwise, that the gap, I think it'll be fairly chalky. I do think
last year we had all the 1 seeds in the Final Four. A lot of people are saying same thing, that one maybe Houston is a 2, but it's the era of the 4 and 5 seed making the Final Four may be gone.
And the other thing is this, right? You have Duke, Arizona, and Michigan have been a cut above everyone for the whole season. Both have KenPom ratings on offense and defense, both within the top 10. They're basically both hovering in the top 5 for most of the season. And then Florida, with this late run, is sort of right there too. And then, we know that Houston and Iowa State are not far behind. Your mileage may vary on teams like Michigan State, UConn, Illinois, Purdue, etc. They're not quite as balanced as those top 3 and then maybe 6. But, I don't know that I don't necessarily see a lot of, in the past, I was very comfortable picking a lot of 7s over 2s and 6s over 3s, and even a 10 to the Elite 8 or something. I had to fill out an expert bracket today for The Athletic, and I just did not have nearly as much chaos as I usually have.
Wait, who was your Final Four?
Except in a couple of spots.
Who was your Final Four?
Very chalky. I went the three big 1 seeds in Houston. So Duke, Michigan, Arizona, Houston. It's not sexy, but
it's probably right.
Well, look, I'm always more worried from a Duke perspective, right? And I think there are a lot of potential pitfalls for them, and a lot of, you really have to weigh, do you think they'll be healthy? And if so, how healthy and at what point? In some ways, a potential St. John's matchup, and maybe Kansas, I don't know. They're too all over the place. St. John's matchup in some ways is scarier as a potential Sweet 16 matchup than maybe an Elite 8 against Michigan State or UConn.
So you said something fascinating to me that brought up something, and you mentioned the fact that you have some coaches now that in this era of transfer portal and NIL that they have started to try and structure their team analytically, right? To kind of make it where they are structurally sound according to the metrics. And it reminds me of universities as a whole when they were trying to game the system with U.S. News and World Report to try and shoot up the rankings. They're like, hey, they are looking for A, B, and C. Let's give them A, B, and C. Talk about some of these bracket busters and some of these teams that you think might be structurally sound to pull off an upset in March.
Okay, so I'll give you 2 classes. Of the mid-majors, our favorite team with the highest killer rating, as we call it, coming in to the tournament was McNeese. And they actually drew a tougher matchup than we would have liked against Vanderbilt, because Vandy actually does a lot of good things that you want from a higher seed. Still, our model gives McNeese about a 41% chance of winning outright. And we had to do something different. So I actually took McNeese not just to beat Vandy, but to beat Nebraska in the next round, who we've identified as a fairly vulnerable giant. So that's kind of my one big outlier in my bracket right now. We do like McNeese. You'll like this. One of the most vulnerable giants coming in, regardless of who they're playing, was the North Carolina Tar Heels for a variety of reasons. And they landed a matchup with VCU, one of our favorite underdogs. So that's also about a 41% chance I have VCU beating Carolina. There's the second class of teams that we call Wounded Assassins. And those are big conference teams that get beat up during the regular season and pile up losses and end up with double-digit seeds. And you've seen a bunch of those teams make Final Four runs over time, whether it was Syracuse or NC State, much to our chagrin.
UCLA did it a few years ago.
Yep, and we actually like the Texas SEC game is going on right now, but we like either team's chances against BYU, about 34-35% for either of them. So if you're looking again, all right, I want to have a couple double-digit teams in making it out of the first round. That's a nice one to pick. Another one that's got a really good chance. We like High Point. Got a 35% chance against Wisconsin. Wisconsin, like Alabama, very reliant on three-point shooting. So totally great, and an even better style if they're playing a better team. So they're one of those teams that could be, more vulnerable early and more dangerous than other five seeds late. But they don't force turnovers. They're below average offensive rebounders, and High Point, 5th in the country in offensive turnover rate, 5th in the country in defensive turnover rate. That's a difference.
That's
of
impressive.
8.9%. So how many extra possessions what do you think? There'll be like a 65 to 70 possession game. So you're getting like 6 or 7 extra possessions off turnovers if you play to your way of playing. That's big.
I think it's interesting, right? With the some of the teams that you mentioned, VCU, for example, they're an 11th seed. They're going up against the 6th seed in North Carolina. They've been in that position before. You mentioned in 2007, there were only 3 bracket busters, and unfortunately, we were on the receiving end of one at the hands of VCU, right? So they've been in that position. McNeese has been in this position before. High Point has been in a similar position where they've had, the team right on the cusp. So it feels like, despite the fact that some of these teams closer to the bubble and some of these mid-majors may be weaker, air quotes, than previous years, they all have that added experience of having done this in the tournament.
Yeah, but what does VCU under Phil Martelli have to do with in his first year and new players? Like, it's just a name on the front of a jersey. Like, I don't mean to dismiss your theory, but sure, these names conjure up things for fans, but these are totally different programs with totally different casts of characters and totally different styles. What I would say is this: there is definitely a difference in especially when you get below the 12 line, of the quality of upset chances that I'm seeing. Now, look, we didn't see St. Peter's or Fairleigh Dickinson coming as a 16/1. So sometimes when something has a 5% chance of happening, you hit the 5 in 100 time, and it happens, right? And
1 out of every 20, yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, in the way we're looking at the field right now, the 14s, the 15s, the 16s, like I used to always have my eye on like a 15-2 game. There was like one that I'm like, you know what, this could happen. And like 2 14-3 games. And I love the 13-4 games. And I'm just seeing less and less of that because I do think the gap has widened. I do think teams are generally playing smarter. Yeah, I mean, we'll see if it plays out, but that's certainly what it looked like last year.
All right, Jordan, last question. You mentioned NC State and Texas. Are there other, a little bit power conference teams, a little bit higher seeded teams that you're like, you know what, that team feels like it's underseeded a little bit to me. The kind of things they do, because it's hard to pick an 11 or even a 10 to make the final 8 or so. But like, is there like a 4 or a 6 or something like that, where you go, you know what, that team feels like that team could be one to surprise? Because you've said this feels really chalky, and I agree with you. It feels really chalky.
Mm-hmm. So some of it was some of my favorite teams didn't get the matchups I wanted. So like I really like Santa Clara, but I also really like Iowa State. So I'm not taking Santa Clara over Iowa State. I think Santa Clara beats Kentucky, and that's it. I'm looking. I have UCLA over UConn right now.
I've got that too. Yeah.
Well, now I need to change it. I have my editors. My editor Mike in my head, who's been saying that this is not the same UConn team. Don't let the previous tournament magic fool you. And the point guard play, it could be some recency bias with how UCLA played in the Big Ten tournament, but I think that's a worthwhile shot if you're going to take a couple shots at these games. I really like Illinois. Like, I'm not going to take, certainly wouldn't take Carolina if they beat VCU, and I'm not going to take VCU over Illinois. I like St. Mary's, but they're not beating Houston, like in my mind. So I like St. Louis. I don't think they're getting by Michigan. So it's just like these teams that I think are good, but facing elite teams. It's a tricky spot. If St. John's were the 5 in Florida's bracket, I might take a shot there, but I'm probably not taking them over Duke. So some of it is just the vagaries of matchups. But I also think, again, like the top teams are really clearly the top teams. It's not like in previous years where I think by the way, I think the seeding is much better. The committee is doing a better job of using the right analytics. So you don't have this team that's like 7, but a 7 seed, but like a top 10 team in the country. Or
right.
A couple of years ago, Duke was like a 4 or 5, and we thought they were a top 10 team. And I think they're getting better at that.
And I think also when you're looking at some of these, I would just remind everybody that you are going off of analytics, you're going off of math, you're going off of, hard data, as opposed to my bracket, which is full of hopes and dreams in some of these cases.
Well, our writing is off of that for sure. There's no opinion in that. When it comes time to fill out a bracket, of course, I'm not just going straight by the numbers. I watch basketball. I'm much more of a basketball guy than a numbers guy. I just know how to read a spreadsheet. But believe me, there's a lot of picks I'm making because of what I've watched and what I feel about matchups than whatever the hell our model says.
All right, man. 30 seconds left. Who you got winning the whole thing? It's the Blue Devils, right?
I may.
And is that your heart? Is that your heart or your head?
I may have some superstition. We have the Blue Devils in our official bracket. I'll say this: if they have to have Gongba back, and I feel pretty strongly that they need Caleb Foster in some form in the Final Four, unless it's a broken Final Four with but otherwise, I think, how about this? How about if Duke doesn't win the championship, who will it be? I've really liked Arizona for a long, long time. I know it's become very chalky as well. I think they're better than Michigan, though, and the difference is the backcourt. And that's what would scare me about them. And then, I think too many people are actually sleeping on Houston right now because they got a little beat up in some of the Big 12 games, but I think they get out of that conference. Flemings is a stud. There's really no hole in that starting lineup. They're scary.
And they can play really, really good defense too.
Yeah, now not as good, not quite the Houston level defense of last year and the year before, but I think their offense has so many more weapons.
Yeah, exactly. All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up here. Jordan Brenner, thank you so much, buddy. We appreciate you. Folks, go to The Athletic, read what Jordan has done. It is really, really impressive math and analytics, and it's also really fun. With that, we're wrapping it up here on the latest edition of the DBR podcast. We'll be back with you after the game against Siena. Donald and I will be here to recap that contest. We are not looking ahead. Every opponent deserves full attention at this time of year. We are focused on the next game, survive and advance. That is what the Blue Devils will be doing, hopefully. He is Jordan. He is Donald. I am Jason. This is the Duke Band playing us out and taking us to Greenville. So we have a family pool that we do, like 20 of us, and pets are included. Like the dogs, and there always has to be a theory for what each dog or cat or whatever is picking. There's just all kinds of different theories that we use, and it's always silliness and craziness. But my goal every year is, dear Lord, please do not let one of the pets beat me.
Look, pets cannot be picking based off a theory. When you have that corgi that does the booping of the ball into the basket every single time during every single particular sport, we got to have something. If they need to paw it, that's fine. But we're not doing theory here. We're not doing ESP. Dogs have brains and minds, and they're lovable.
When I was growing up, our golden retriever, I would write the name of the two teams playing each other and put a little piece of his dog food on each, and whichever one he went to first.
Which one he goes to. Yeah.
Yep.
So you did that 63 times? Because there are a lot of games in the tournament.
A lot of fucking games.
And you know what?
I was committed.
Dog was happy.
Dog was very happy.
After the 63rd treat, he was like, "Where's 64, baby?
Where's 64? Yeah. We done?"
Yeah. You know what I did? What I did for Cameron, my dearly departed Cameron, was Cameron loved tennis balls. Like, that was the thing Cameron loved more than anything else on the planet. So I would look at the tennis rankings, and I would pick the schools that were best in the tennis rankings. So that was how I picked for Cameron.
That's amazing.
I often ended up picking Ivy. As a result, Cameron picked a lot of Ivy League teams. The Ivy League's good at tennis.
Yes.
Go Penn. Go Quakes.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.